call this meeting to order. Oh, thanks for your patience this morning as we battled the traffic. So welcome to the Legislative and Human Resources Committee. It's February 8:30, almost 8:40 a.m. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment? You can come on up to the podium here and state your name and address for the record, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
I'm Leslie Sanford at 235 Bayton in Grand Rapids. I'm here as a representative advocate for senior issues, and you will be voting today on a proposal for senior millage, and I just want to thank you for your consideration. It is such an important proposal, and the funds are so needed. We are asking only for what was asked last time, and even though the market values will increase, the need has outpaced that by far. So thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public who'd like to make a comment? You're welcome to join us.
Hi, my name is Kathy Larson, and thank you for hearing us. I live in the Grand Rapids Township. I've been a volunteer counselor for Medicare Medicaid Assistance Program. Get a chance to talk to many people in different situations. And I've become kind of aware, and you may also be aware if you have parents or grandparents that are aging, the challenges they face as they try to remain healthy, safe, and happy in their homes. There are many people in the middle-income senior population that will be at risk without the area agency's services. And I encourage you to really seriously consider this knowledge. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members from the public who'd like to speak this morning? Step up to the mic if you want to speak. All right. Seeing none, thank you for speaking. The senior millage is definitely an important thing that our county offers, and there's a lot of collaboration involved. So I'm glad to see it on the agenda today. So that brings us to our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. I hope you all had a chance to review the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved and supported. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda comes from the Administrator's Office, and it's about adding one welcome plan coordinator to the Administrator's Office.
One part-time welcome plan coordinator to the Administrator's Office. Grand Rapids, Kent County was one of 13 communities who participated in the national initiative Gateways for Growth to develop a local welcome plan. The community-led plan is designed to help refugees and immigrants overcome barriers in 5 categories: civic engagement, economic development, safe and connected communities, education, and equitable access to services. The Administrator's Office is requesting a part-time welcome plan coordinator position that will work with the Gateways for Growth Steering Committee to facilitate implementation of the Kent County Welcome Plan. The total annual cost of salary and benefits is $65,557. The cost of the position will be funded by contributions from Kent County, Warner Norcross and Judd, Fifth Third Bank, City of Grand Rapids, Steelcase, Spectrum Health, and the Grand Rapids Community Foundation, and held in trust by Samaritas. These funds were previously appropriated via Board Resolution 1014-21-101. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Thanks, Al. Is there a motion? Moved. Is there support? Support? All right. Any questions or comments regarding this item? Commissioner Burrow.
Yes, October, several months ago. So can we just kind of get a little breakdown on how that grant works and maybe what the contributions coming from these different organizations and the county's kind of contribution and our responsibilities, please?
All right. Yeah, we have
Sure.
Teresa Branson here with some additional information. Thanks, Teresa.
Yes, thank you for your question, Commissioner. In terms of the contributions in the breakdowns there, I apologize, I don't have the breakdown from each of those organizations in front of me, but I can get that unless, Joel, do you have those amounts? So I have Joel Lautenbach here with me, Director from Samaritas. But since these funds were approved, the originally request was fundraising that took place a couple years ago with the Gateways for Growth Steering Committee, of which Joel Lautenbach led the request to different investors and funders to support the position. We did put this proposal out to bid earlier in the year, but that resulted in just a few individuals applying. And then after a review with the steering committee and with the administrator, we decided it was best to pursue this as a part-time employee position. One of the proposals we received was not two out of the three were not complete proposals. I think because of the way the RFP was set up, it was meant more for an employee type position. So therefore we received resumes versus full proposals for that. And we believe that part of this, having somebody on a team with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, working directly with those 4 or 5 agencies that are part of the steering committee, is a better plan for moving forward with that. But the contributions, Joel can speak to that.
Sure. Thank you, Teresa. So the funds were given in trust for the whole community. The city, the chambers, the Grand Rapids Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Kent County, and Samaritas collaborated in those asks. And the focus was, how do we create the welcome plan and then animate it or implement it? So the responsibility for the county coordinator position would really be to work with the agencies that are a part of the task force and the members of the steering committee, which is about 30 participants from many different organizations across the community, to work on the recommendations of the welcome plan. There's not a real responsibility for the county to implement the plan. Rather, the coordinator is there to help facilitate the community members implementing the plan. And so the funds were given with the expectation that the committee and the coordinator would carry that responsibility out. When we looked at the geography of welcoming, we thought that the county, given the presence of immigrants and refugees broader than just Grand Rapids or maybe one of the suburbs, county-wide, the coordinator role should be held at the county. So that's why the request is at the county instead of at the city of Grand Rapids or a specific organization. Does that help answer your question?
Yes. So this,
Contributions, Fifth Third's 25,000, Steelcase 10,000, Spectrum Health 10,000, the Grand Rapids Community Foundation 10,000, Warren Cross and Judd 5,000, the City of Grand Rapids 15,000, and Kent County 10,000.
assuming the work schedules, 3 days a week, how are they?
The hours, I think, as requested.
Yeah, so the position's 28 hours, and so that's, the schedule's going to be driven by both the task force members and when those groups meet. So we'll have 4 or 5 priority work groups to carry out the welcome plan recommendations. And we'll stand up a funding development committee, so that welcome coordinator will need to be available when those meetings are taking place. So the scheduled hours will be determined, but I imagine it will be 3 to 5 days a week. Or it could be 5 days a week if it's just a few hours, but we'll determine that once we have somebody on board. But through this process, we would be pending, approval by LHR and the board, we would go ahead and post that externally for 2 weeks and bring somebody on board and then determine scheduling from that point.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Brevi. The question is probably for both of them. It's kind of a two-part, then I'm going to have a follow-up. So we're adding a county employee, and yet throughout our community, we have a DDA, Experience Grand Rapids, we have chambers in numerous cities and municipalities. We got the Grand Rapids Chamber that has a wide reach. Why is this position better fit in a governmental unit when all these other organizations that I just mentioned taken part of welcoming people to the community? Why is it a better fit to be here instead of in the private sector?
I can start with ties everybody together throughout the county. Nonprofits, different chambers, different business groups, the governments. So I think that was the thinking.
Yes, and I was going to say, many of those organizations are including the Welcome Plan as a part of their strategic plan, recognizing that, it's, all of those recommendations and priorities are things that each of those organizations that are part of the task force, many of the organizations that you mentioned, see this as a community collaborative, and so therefore, just building on what Al was sharing, when this was discussed, there were some discussions about where this should land, but it kept coming back to this should be county because refugees and immigrants, we want to ensure welcoming environment regardless of where people reside in the county.
So where do you see this position 5 and 10 years from now? I mean, is this something, once you come up with a plan and everyone's on board and we've implemented it, is this a position that continues on?
Yeah, I believe, well, speaking to where I see it personally, 5 to 10 years, I mean, there's been a steering committee that's worked on this, and Gateways for Growth is a national initiative, and to bring the position here, our community is, and the populations are growing as such, and even with the recent arrival of Afghan refugees, I don't know, like 5, 10, years from now, what our community makeup will look like. But I know that there's, even with the most recent arrivals, there's been a lot to learn from our different community organizations about the needs of that population. So I anticipate 5 to 10 years from now that we will have more, community investment in not just the position, but the plan. We are also having some conversations. Ottawa County is also in the process of getting their strategic planning underway. They're also a Gateways for Growth community. So I think 5 to 10 years from now, we could look at having more of a shared position between Kent and Ottawa.
Okay, and then Al, just a last follow-up question. We hear a lot about welcoming people, making them feel at home, and we're always talking about the human bodies. If you look at this physical building that we operate out of, do you think this is a welcoming building? Because we park in a tunnel, we walk across the street, we walk through another tunnel to a room that's got glass windows to pay bills. The welcome receptionist that we had there no longer exists. You take elevators up to rooms that are full of cubicles. Is that really welcoming to anybody coming into our buildings?
Yeah, I would say no. I would say that at least this facility hasn't changed much in the 18 years I was gone. I can tell you that I have been part of implementing open space systems, and that is on the agenda. We also had a meeting out at Progressive last week to look at where they're at on our space needs study that's due to be completed this year. So I would say, I understand what you're saying. I agree to some extent. It's what people are used to. But also, I think we're definitely looking, we have to really change the functionality and look of our buildings in the future, both for employee productivity, health, and I think just for innovation. There will be a lot more on that to come, but yes, I agree.
Yeah, and I, thank you for that, and I agree with that. And, this is an old building, and I've visited some of the new city offices, county offices around the country, and, it should be welcoming to all, to the employees too, because we've got them so segregated throughout. And some of the newer county buildings around the country, when it comes to just the thing of eating lunch, I'm assuming most of our employees just eat it at their cubicle alone, is they go to the complete opposite, where everyone goes to an area that's open, where you can get to know your fellow workers, what their backgrounds are, what their interests are. A lot of that, divide and uncertainty about your fellow worker can be answered if we just have more of an environment where people get an opportunity to interact face to face. So, thank you.
All right, Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a great plan. I was looking at it the other day, and I feel like it's a well-developed plan, and that this position is hopefully going to fill some needs. I just wondered in terms of the longevity of the commitment from the different organizations to fund this position. I didn't see specifically in here like how long they had committed to supporting this role. Can you provide a bit more detail on that?
Yeah, so currently, the funds are set up to support the role through the end of this fiscal year. We were planning on using this 2022, working with the steering committee to establish a fund development committee. Many of the steering committee members, specifically the Grand Rapids Chamber in City of Grand Rapids and Samaritas, all have this as a part of their strategic plan and are ready to get to work to identify excuse me, the longevity, I can't say that word this morning. Thank you, of the position in the plan. So just know I have a lot of committed folks, and we've been reaching back out to those 5 or 6 investors who, those were just original investors in that. And so I'm confident that those organizations are going to be ready, but we have to be able to demonstrate, get this position on board, get the welcome plan up and running and operating, and then at the same time working on our funding development plan.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one follow-up question. So, so is it possible, I guess, to get to a place in 1 year, we're kind of already into 2022, to get to a place where there is something to assess whether or not this is working and whether funders want to continue to support it?
Yes, and I think funders are already expressing their commitment to want to fund. Some of our local foundations also are including and already are funding other initiatives that are aligned with the welcome plan. So we started to take a look at that. And so I do believe that within a year, and even less, we'll start getting those commitments. Many, again, made those commitments before we even had a plan ready. And so I think we're in a community where many of our foundations and in private sectors as well are already starting to communicate their interest to support it because they see, one, the value, and they want to share and celebrate in the diversity of that.
Maybe I'll jump in too. I think by the end of the year, we'll have a good idea if we're on the right path. We're not going to have the results, the metrics that show it's a big success yet or anything like that, but at least we'll have enough to show that we're on the right path. And I do think that there's a lot of interest in making sure this happens. So I feel pretty good about that progression.
Yes, please.
I think we need to get started. The funders so far have been very interested in what it is and what it's meant to do. We really haven't even asked them for re-upping because we were kind of waiting to see where this process ended up. As Teresa described, we started with one path and now we're here on this path. The coordinator has always been the goal, but where and exactly how it's created was the question. Now that we're here, I think that the funders will say, okay, great, now we can get to work. This isn't a lot of money, especially for the players that are interested in it. And their appetite to be in this space is really quite high. So, Steelcase asks, what do we have to do? I mean, it's Spectrum, the same thing. So we have our large community organizations and institutions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, a couple more questions. Commissioner LeGrand?
Thank you, Chair. So it is an interesting path that got us to this point, and I can see the logic behind the county taking on the role of this coordinator position. But how does, I assume, because you're here, Teresa, that we're talking about this person being in the DEI office, and what does that mean for supervision? What does that mean for reporting out? If this is someone who is this really just coordinating, or is it sort of quasi-reporting to all of these other groups as well? It just seems like a kind of a nebulous territory. So how do we see that aspect of the role?
Yes, when we started to create the position, and even in the original RFP, all the roles and responsibilities of the position are included in there. I'm not sure if it's in your packet, but if not, I can make sure I get it to everyone as well as the job description. However, we have already laid out, so yes, this position will report directly to me and will get its day-to-day direction from me in terms of the hours, scheduling, the accountability, and accountability to those investors and funders and to all of you in terms of the progress that's being made. The steering committee, because of their investment too, our support to myself and the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and together with them, we will work on the plan in terms of the administration of the welcome plan. So I really see the steering committee as being support to myself and to the coordinator they are the innovators of the plan because they work together to develop it. But they're staying on as to kind of do as other steering committees and advisory groups do. My goal is that the steering committee would come to consensus on things, and they already have on many things to date. But where they can't, then we're working on agreements between the county and each of those steering committee members, how they're going to operate, what those operating guidelines are going to be, and then the same thing with the task force. We're developing a collaborative involvement agreement with the task force members, just so that those roles are very clear, what my role is, what the steering committee's role is, what the welcome plan coordinator is. And I say task force, but it's going to be more that the working members of the community who are going to staff those 4 or 5 work groups.
Again, I want to make sure I clarify this so we're all really crystal clear. The content comes from the plan and from the committee.
Right.
The administration comes from the DEI director. So it's more of a ministerial role to make sure stuff gets done and that all the boxes are checked and all that type of thing, rather than the content of what's going to be done.
Yeah, Kent County is not responsible for the welcome plan implementation. It's a community plan, and the coordinator held in support by the DEI office is there to help animate the plan for the entire community. So you're not, when you read the plan, it's not that the county has to implement all aspects of the plan. Everyone can see themselves in the plan and take pieces of it that are appropriate.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you. I agree with our administrator that Kent County is appropriate here for bringing everybody together. I think because of the breadth, we are countywide in terms of population, the scope of services that we already have. And so I really support this in terms of our, the collaboration that's being brought forth and the coordination and the way in which this is all being convened. And I think that the goals are really very well stated in the presentation. The literature you've already presented is really, really well states a comprehensive view that can incorporate many of the agencies and the supportive services. And I think that this is something Kent County can do well. And we're having senior millage come up later this morning too. And we are a convener, we're a collaborator, all the C words. We're the coordinator, and it works well, bringing the parties together. I appreciate this.
Commissioner Kallman.
Thank you, Chair. On the compensation piece, in the competitive labor market we're in right now, is this going to be sufficient to attract the talent that we're looking for this position? And on the flip side, given those dynamics, is this compensation going to cause any kind of internal comparable position, dynamics or considerations?
Great question. Considering many conversations with our HR department and what the staffing looks like across the county right now, I can remain very hopeful that we will attract the right person for the position. Also, again, working with our steering committee and the task force members, we plan to do some aggressive recruiting and sharing wherever we can. We've had some traction. When this first started, there was a part-time coordinator that was working with the steering committee to get the plan developed. That was an awesome, robust intern through Samaritas. And so I think, with the qualifications, and I did take the position through a job audit and a market study with our HR department to look at wages. And and also internally, looking at existing positions with where the responsibilities may line up. So in terms of the internal question, I don't think we'll have any issue there. You're welcome.
All right, any further questions or comments regarding this item? Seeing none, we have a motion and support. Now it's time for a vote. So all those in favor of adding one welcome plan coordinator to the admin office, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda comes from the Board of Commissioners, and it's the request for the senior millage.
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt a resolution authorizing that a proposition be placed on the August 2, 2022 primary election ballot for purposes of a millage for services to persons 60 years of age and older. The senior services millage was approved as a dedicated millage of 0.50 mils and expired on December 31, 2021. The original senior millage was passed in 1998 and was renewed in 2006 and 2014. The county received a request to place a millage proposal on the August 2, 2022 primary election ballot. It is within the discretion of the Board of Commissioners whether to submit the proposal to the electors who reside within the Kent County. This request is for an 8-year dedicated 0.50 mill levy, and that's from 2022 through 2029, to generate revenues to plan, evaluate, and provide services and programs for persons aged 60 years or older. There are 72 counties in Michigan that have an approved full or partial senior millage. 76% of the senior millages are at 0.50 mils or more. The proposed millage of 0.50 mils would cost a homeowner $50 annually per 100,000 of taxable value. Corporate Council will review and approve the senior millage ballot language as to form. This item was approved by the Finance and Physical Resources Committee on February 1, 2022.
Thanks, Al. Is there a motion? Commissioner Hennessy, is there support? All right. Are there questions or comments regarding this item? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Breeby. Al, do you know offhand, and if not, you can get it to me later, of this millage, how many other people got their fingers in it, like local DDAs and other tax increment financing districts?
You know, 31.
It's the last page.
So 31, it's on the last page of the packet, so it's alphabetically Ada through Wyoming.
So of all that are listed here, what is the total amount of money that taxpayers believe is going to the senior citizen services, yet never reached the senior citizen population?
We have a guy who can answer that question. Matt Wolford's here, so.
I can't answer it to the specifics, but I can just tell you just generally how the tax captures works. I think we're generally aware. Tax captures on the whole represent less than 5% of the revenues. The reason that the 31 are enunciated in the ballot language is so that the totality of all of the districts that capture it are in there. So we don't have the specifics, but in general, the aggregate is less than 5% overall. Generally, I'm the most comfortable on the valuation side, and I defer to the fiscal services on the financial side because it is a bit complicated to track that from beginning to end. But in general, that's the general state of affairs with the DDAs.
But all of these that are listed
Yes.
have the option of opting out and not collect that tax. Is that correct?
The various DDAs, TIFAs, brownfields, OPRAs, there's a bunch of them that are in there. Some are statutory, some are, some we can opt out of and some we can't. And that is driven by the economic.
He's asking if they can opt out. They can't opt out,
No,
but we can opt out of some of their levies, their TIF levies.
that is
So,
correct.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I was.
So the list is long, but what I guess what I didn't see was, what about the transit millage, different other millages like that are not authorities or DDAs, how many of those are collecting that money and not giving it back to the seniors?
Well,
So like the Kent District Library has a millage,
sure.
the Rapid has a millage, and do they take a share out of what's collected out of this? None
Oh,
whatsoever?
those are separate dedicated villages. The tax capture districts are the ones that don't have their own separately passed millages. And the way that their funding mechanisms are is they take a percentage of the rest of the taxing authorities. The library and the transportation, they have their own dedicated millages, so they do not capture.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions regarding this item? Commissioner Kallman?
So, for a number of years, I've had the privilege of serving on the Senior Millage Allocation Committee, and I'm always, just very cautious, when taking, people's money and putting it to something, I think even something that's got wide public support, there's always, impacts on people. And on the last item where Commissioner Ponstein's, expressing, concern about, are we doing something that the private sector can do? I'll stand next to Commissioner Ponstein on that every day, that if the private sector can do it, it should. In this case, I think we've got, with the senior millage, we've got a model of how government works really, really well. And as a funding mechanism, shared resources from the community, and yet all of the activities, I think it's well over 80, maybe even 90% of the work that this funds is done by private entities. And that really, I think, keeps kind of the spirit of things being innovative and able to be, changed and evolved over time. And so I'm very, very supportive of continuing this millage, at its current rate, just because I think it's done so effectively and to such great benefit in our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Skaggs?
We've had this millage in 98, 2006, and 2014. Is it the opinion of the administrator that the Area Agency on Aging is working well in its capacity?
Yes.
And do we have any metrics about, the outcome of this, of these millages and their impact on the senior population?
I believe we have a lot of metrics, so.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kendrick Heinlein. I'm the Director of Contract Services at the Area Agency on Aging. So each program that we see it serve, the 32 programs currently with over 50 services that we provide, we have outcome measurements that we build in to measure those services. So that's something that we review yearly, see their effectiveness, and then we publicize in a report so the public can see what those outcomes are as well.
Okay, so we've established that there's a need, that we trust our partner, and that outcomes are working. I'm a yes. Let's see what the voters say.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding the Commissioner LeGrand?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a quick question. How, and it's just a follow-up to Commissioner Ponstein's question, and that is, if we have 31 authorities that can take a piece of a millage, and there's 24 in this particular millage that get a piece of it, how does that work? How do we decide who gets it, or what's the requirement for getting a piece of the money?
Actually, Commissioner, that's a good question, and if you look at, on the action request, it does say that council's office is going to approve it as to form. The 24, I believe, is a typo. It's 31 and 31.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
All right, any further questions? Oh, Commissioner Hennessy.
I agree with Commissioner Coleman in that we've worked together on the Senior Millage Review Committee, and it is an extensive review for accountability of all of the agencies. And we receive the written reports, but we have a rotating schedule where they come in and do their own presentations, and we can question them. This is another case, like the previous question, where we are the collaborator, a convener. We help to monitor and to ensure the good use. And so my only concern might be we're continuing the .50 millage rate, and we're going to take that forward 8 years in the future. And and of course, we see the tax base increasing, but we also see the effects of Headley. And so, is this going to be sufficient to meet the needs for 8 years in the future? How are you viewing that in terms of the local community and the aging of our Kent County community?
Projection-wise, we're very comfortable with the request for the next 8 years. And as you know, Commissioner Hennessy, we always look to collaborate with funding. So we're looking to come alongside the millage funding with whether it be Older Americans Act funding, different grants. We always preach to our partners that they need to diversify their funding and make sure that it's not just 100% millage paying for that service. So we're going to look to do that as an agency well. So not only do we preach it, but we're putting it into practice as well.
That is true, and that all of the agencies are asked, do you have other means of funding beyond senior millage? And that is an important consideration for us, in that they do their own support for the services that are provided in addition to what's provided by this millage. And Senior Advocates is here today, and I take it that they're going to be helping to coordinate the millage campaign?
They are going to be front and center on it. Yes, we'll be helping them with any information that they need, but Advocates for Senior Issues will be heading the campaign.
All right, any other questions or comments? I think this is a good example of strong collaboration in our community between public and private organizations. So the senior millage has long served our seniors, and I look forward to our vote. All right, so seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the senior millage request, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So our next item on the agenda is miscellaneous. Is there any commissioner miscellaneous today? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Breeby. So Al, just back to this list of people who collect and don't. Can we just get more of an update? Because in my understanding, looking at the list, and maybe Commissioner Burrow, Wyoming's got a DDA, don't they? So the city of Wyoming collects it for the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, but they don't for the DDAs. I guess my question is, what is the complete list of every financing district? Which ones exempt things, which ones they do? The question about, like the library millage and the transit millage, I might have stated in or wrong that didn't understand what my point is that they're also affected by people capturing money. That's, the voters voted to do one thing and the money's doing for another. So I guess I want the complete list, not just the 31 here that will be collecting it. How many are still out there that are not collecting it? Not just on this one, on everything out there that has a millage and is open for them to take money out of.
Yes, we'll get you a list, and we may be calling you for more clarification, but we can get that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
just saying that there are some that don't collect it. And I would like a complete list of tax that implement and then divide it out on what they take the money and the ones that they've opted out.
Okay. Yes, we will get that.
All right, any further miscellaneous? I just have a brief one. Welcome back, Commissioner McLeod. She swapped spots with Commissioner Wooden, and now he's in his leadership role, so he's on the Finance Committee, and she's back with us on Legislative. So thanks for joining us today. Any other thoughts or comments? Seeing none, our meeting is adjourned, and we will meet on February 22 at 8:30 a.m.